Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Friday, November the 15th, 2024. On the show tonight, is there going to be an election in Canada? Is there going to be an election? I know a lot of you may have been misled by some independent political pundits out there that you see on YouTube every single day because they put up clickbait headlines and misleading headlines. And then they go through the first 20, 30 minutes of their live stream or their show or whatever, and they say, oh, here it is, here it comes. And then nothing ever happens. Ultimately, what we have to do is think with this and not this, and everything is going to be okay. Now, the reason that this is happening is because Jagmeet Singh is out of control. He's all over the place, yelling and screaming, hey, Pierre, where are you? I'm with the striking workers here. Where are you? What's going on? The Liberal government must be held accountable for sticking their nose into business that's not theirs. All of that. And then when they get back to the House of Commons and they have question period and they have an opposition day, does Jagmeet Singh, who cannot stand this corrupt, evil Liberal government, call for a motion of non-confidence? No. Does he vote with the Conservatives when they call a motion of non-confidence? No. Will he do so going forward? He's painted himself into a corner. He's taken away all of his credibility. And yet, will he stand with the opposition parties in voting down the Liberal government? Probably not. We'll get to all that in just a second, as Canada Post announced today that 55,000 workers have gone on strike. Will you miss your mail? The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. With one of the great products, it's the Recover Muscle Cream. Experience the ultimate comfort and relaxation as Recover works its magic. Formulated with cutting-edge technology, my friends, this is the SilverCeutical nanotechnology. The advanced muscle cream provides unparalleled relief, catering to your unique needs. Get this and all of the other awesome products available at CanadaNanoSilver.com. That's the immune gummies. That's the facial serum. All of that stuff, it's there. It's available when you're supporting CanadaNanoSilver.com. You are supporting the Shadow at Night live stream. So get down there, order some stuff. And they also make great stocking stuffers. Christmas is coming up. Let's not forget. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you're looking for a retail location near you, you can find one on the retail locations tab. There are over 30 scattered across the country. If you would like to become a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right, let's say some quick hellos here. Yes, we made it back for a second straight night all over social media. So people are watching on Facebook, they're watching on YouTube, they're watching on Twitch, they're watching on X, they're watching on Telegram, Rumble, and on ShadowDavis.com, the all access members. By the way, I have a fantastic lecture that was given a few years ago. I think it was 2019 by a world-renowned professor whose name is Sam Richards. He talks about the Covington kids. Remember that case back in 2019? Nicholas, what was his last name? Can't remember. He was the kid with the MAGA hat on and the Indian chief who came up and rattled some beads in front of his face, and the entire media went crazy. Said, these kids are racist. They're Catholic school kids. They're MAGA kids. They're racists. Sandman, Nicholas Sandman, and he won like millions, tens of millions of dollars from the New York Times and CNN and all of that. Well, Professor Richards turns it around on all of the lefties in this lecture we're going to present in the extension for the all access members after 9 o'clock Central on ShadowDavis.com. If you're not a member, I suggest you go and become one as soon as you possibly can. It's a pretty reasonable price, $12, all that extra content, and soon the possibility of winning a Shadow Davis Show coffee mug. Not a small one either. When I do coffee mugs, I do them big. Hello, Julie. Yes, Julie is talking here in this Facebook comment about the Fifth Estate doing a story on the convoy protest and the Coots blockade and how extremism had a lot to do with that. That story, if you see that on TV, it's going to make your blood boil. I've got the written version I'm going to read to you guys tonight. I'm going to try and get through it anyway. That's coming up in about 10 minutes. Hello, Robert, watching in Kelowna. John is watching tonight. Chuck, Angela, JJ Jonathan's watching from Newcomerstown, Ohio on YouTube tonight. Hello, Tracy and Lolita and Eddie. Raven Sunstar 2001. That's a name generally reserved for the Rumble folks, but that's on YouTube tonight. Welcome, everybody. If you're here watching, that means that you're curious about what I've got to present to you tonight, which means your people will probably be curious as well, and they might not know about this show. So please like and share. Get it out there to as many people as we possibly can. It helps beat those censorship algorithms. Okay, here's the first story. Are you going to miss your mail? All those flyers? All that junk mail, all those credit card applications, are you going to miss that? Did postal workers go on strike? This is from left-wing corporate CTV. Yes. About 55,000 Canada Post workers went on strike today after failing to reach a negotiated agreement with their employer. Is Canada Post delivering mail? Mail and parcels won't be processed or delivered, and no new items will be accepted until the strike is over, according to Canada Post. It said services to remote and northern regions that heavily rely on Canada Post are shut down. Ooh. Our post office is closed. Well, some of them, you got to visit the Canada Post website for more or call ahead. Just let it ring. Somebody's eventually going to get to it. What will happen? Well, Canada Post said it will continue operating and maintaining service if there are rotating strikes as negotiations continue. However, mail won't be delivered and service guarantees are affected for items already in the postal network. So if it's been sent, you're going to get it, hopefully, at some point soon. All mail and parcels will be secured and delivered as fast as possible on a first-in, first-out basis once operations resume, according to Canada Post. Now, Wab Kinew, the NDP premier of Manitoba, said, well, we got to come up with a way to get people their vital mail. So what are you going to do, Wab? You're going to cross picket lines? You're an NDP premier. You're going to do that? You're going to go cross a picket line to get people their mail? It's sticky wicket, my friend. How long will the delivery delays last? Well, we don't know. Canada Post warned that service will be affected well past the end of the strike. Processing and delivery may take time to fully return to normal, and Christmas is coming. It's been a long year. I wish you were here. That song by the Payolas. I think that Christmas song used to play it every year on the radio. Impact on orders from small businesses. The impact on orders placed with small businesses will depend on which courier service a business uses. Those using other couriers like FedEx won't face this. Well, FedEx ain't on strike, baby. They're going to make a gold mine during this whole time. Same with, what's that brown one? UPS and a couple of others. According to CP, bookbinders said retailers will likely pay 30 to 40% more to use they're going to gouge to use alternative shippers, which means customers may be charged more. Oh, well, I get my social assistance checks. Canada Post and Postal Workers Union say they've agreed to continue delivering government benefit checks, including OAS, that's old age security, despite the strike. Still, the Canadian Press reported that Service Canada has recommended setting up direct deposits to ensure those funds arrive without delay. You probably should have done that already. Like, you can't depend on mail. Mail? Come on. Banks have made similar recommendations to customers when it comes to billing and other communications. Then again, I mean, banks? Come on. Government? Come on. Several Canadian banks are urging customers to switch to online statements and e-banking to stay on top of their statements, bills, and other banking communications. For example, CIBC said customers are required to make regular payments and meet financial obligations on credit cards, loans, and mortgages, even if there's a strike. We don't care. Give me my freaking money. Like Tony Soprano. Other banks, including Bank of Montreal and Scotiabank, have issued similar statements. Give me my freaking money. All right. Jagmeet Singh does not approve of any government intervention in this particular strike. Then again, Jagmeet Singh doesn't approve of government intervention in any strike. Here he is last week, yelling and screaming and ranting and raving regarding the port strike. This is last Friday.
What happened recently, which really for us was a pretty big deal, is a line in the sand that was crossed, a line that was crossed when Justin Trudeau, for our Teamster brothers and sisters that were on strike, and he forced binding arbitration. That was wrong. Not only was that wrong, what he sent was a message that if an employer mistreats the working people, negotiates in bad faith, doesn't actually honor the agreements of the workers, undermines a good process from going on, he rewarded that bad faith. He rewarded that bad faith by saying, okay, if you hurt the worker, we're going to give you what you want anyway and force binding arbitration. So we want to send a message. That's a breach of trust with working people. That was wrong and it was shameful.
Now, there were other rants that Jagmeet made saying, I cannot support a government that sticks its nose in and interferes with workers and their employers' business. It's none of the government's concern. This is Labour Minister Steve McKinnon last Tuesday.
Morning, Canada's largest east and west coast ports sit silent. But the consequences impact the lives of working people and families across Canada. As Canada's Minister of Labour, it is my duty and responsibility to secure industrial peace in the national interest of all Canadians and to promote conditions favorable to the settlement of the parties' disputes. So today, I have invoked my authorities under the Canada Labour Code. Under Section 107 of the Code, I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to order that all operations and duties at the ports resume and to assist the parties in settling their collective agreements by imposing final and binding arbitration. This will bring the necessary resolutions for both workers and employers. I have also directed the board to extend the terms of the existing collective agreements until new ones are established. There will be a debate about this, the second such use of this instrument to settle a long-standing labor dispute. I welcome that debate.
Yeah. Did Jagmeet say, step down or we'll get rid of you ourselves? No. Nope. Doesn't agree with it. But he's not going to do anything about it. But then there he is again today, yelling and screaming with Cup W workers as they walk off the job.
Democrats are here to stand in solidarity with these workers. We've got a clear message. We want these workers to be able to negotiate a fair deal.
That's right.
These workers have the right to strike.
That's right.
So our message to the Liberals is stay out of it.
That's right.
Don't interfere. Don't force binding arbitration, and certainly do not bring in back-to-work legislation. The workers are demanding fair wages and safe work conditions, and we support them.
That's right.
Every step of the way. I want to say something very clearly. If Justin Trudeau and the Liberals think they can bring in any back-to-work legislation, even if they make it a confidence vote, New Democrats will be voting against it. These workers deserve...
Wait. Hold on. We got to go back just a second because I think he realizes what he said there right after he said it. Let's go back just a few seconds. Even if it's a confidence vote. Look at his face. Look at the big draw of breath.
We'll be against it.
Oh.
These workers deserve to strike. They deserve to fight for fair wages, and we're going to back them up so they can do that every step of the way.
Here, here.
So.
All right. So, Christmas is coming. A lot of important parcels get shipped back and forth at this time every year. People start sending them now. What is it, November the 15th? Right? So, if this strike lasts a week, 2 weeks, that's going to be a 2-week backlog. So it pretty much effectively screws any sort of Christmas parcel transportation, unless you're using FedEx or UPS or one of the others, Purolator. But I think Purolator is part of Canada Post now, if I'm not mistaken, which would mean they're on strike as well. I don't know for sure. But is the government planning on doing back-to-work legislation in this particular instance? Well, for the time being, no. According to CP24, Ottawa has ruled out early intervention to end the Canada Post strike. But notice they say early intervention. If this thing goes on any longer, and if constituents get angry and start writing emails and letters, then they will, which will force Jagmeet Singh's hand. We'll vote against it even if it's a confidence motion. All right. And that would mean the Bloc is going to play, because the Bloc's in good shape for an election right now. The Conservatives have been wanting this for a while, obviously. Even the Liberals have cranked up the rhetoric on social media, and they're starting to buy commercials on TV and on websites. Have you noticed any Liberal Party of Canada commercials on websites lately? Just a website you go to, all of a sudden a Liberal commercial pops up before you get to the website. Yeah, that's what they're doing. So how is everybody doing in the polls? Let me ask you guys. I'm not sure if you're familiar with all of the pollsters across Canada. There's Angus Reid. There's Nanos. Who's the most biased of all the pollsters across the country? Just write it down in the comments. Go ahead and let me know what you think. Because I believe that most of the pollsters, except for one, that would be Angus Reid, are all pretty much left-leaning, left-biased. One stands out in particular. But who's the worst? And if you look at 338 Canada, or Canada 338, whatever it is, you see all of the polls listed, and all of the pollsters, save one, show the Conservatives usually about 41, 42, even 43%. Ecos, all of those guys. But one pollster has them usually underneath 40 by a couple of points. Christina, ding, ding, ding. I would say Nanos is the most biased pollster, and even Nanos, in order to protect his integrity, his company's integrity, still has to give us some inkling that the Conservatives are up. Here is the latest edition of CTV's Trendline, and remember that CTV has contracted Nick Nanos and his polling company, Nanos Research, to be their exclusive poller. CTV, as we know, is left-wing government media. They take government subsidies, right? They've got, even though their VP of news says, no, we haven't got any political leanings, and testified to that in committee a few weeks ago. We know they do. I mean, it's obvious that all of the media in this country, all of the corporate media is biased hard to the left, favoring Justin Trudeau. And Nanos, as a contractee of CTV, has got to go along with that. So having said that, here is the latest edition of Nanos on the Numbers, the trend line.
I think this is a pretty good chance to look at the latest ballot tracking for where the parties stand. So where are we now?
Well, we have the Conservatives with support of about 4 out of every 10 Canadians in the latest Nanos tracking, 41%. Liberals back 16 points at 25, NDP at 19, so they're under 20, which is not good for them. Bloc at 9, Green Party at 4. What was happening before was a split between the Liberals and the New Democrats. It was like 22-22. Now the Liberals are ahead of the New Democrats outside of the margin of error. The Conservatives are still firmly in majority territory with 41% support. The Bloc are actually doing quite well in the province of Quebec. And, Pierre Poilievre still in the driver's seat when it comes to ballot preferences.
Nick, there's been a lot of questions over the past year about the future of Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party. We've seen a lot of MPs say that they will not seek re-election. You did a recent poll that touched on this for CTV News. What did you find out?
Well, what we found out in the new survey that we just released with CTV News was that it looks like there's no savior for the Liberal Party today, at least with what's on the menu. About 1 out of every 4 Canadians say none of the above. When we listed a whole swath of individuals, including current cabinet ministers like Melanie Joly and Chrystia Freeland and Champagne. And
Yeah. A little bit behind there. I mean, nobody has talked about that whole Liberal coup for the last couple of weeks now, because none of them, those backbenchers, have any spine whatsoever. It looks like they're resigned to going into the next election, whether it's next October, November, January, with Justin Trudeau at the helm. And quite frankly, my friends, that's what I would like to see as well. Justin Trudeau going down in flames. Wouldn't that be? We should have fireworks on that day from coast to coast. We should set it up now. We should start planning. We should start give, send, goes, right? Build up thousands of dollars for a fireworks day, the day that Justin Trudeau loses the election. I ran across this today. This is from a couple of years ago. Jordan Peterson talking about Justin Trudeau. And I thought, I got to show you guys this in case you've never seen it.
State you get in when you elect Peter Pan to be your leader. I think he's an incompetent narcissist. I think every single word that Justin Trudeau says is a lie. I think every single gesture he makes.
Obviously, it's running a little bit fast, but that's the way the video came out. Anyway.
Is a lie. It's all performative. He was a drama teacher. He was completely and utterly unqualified for the job. And he scuttled the Canadian economy. We're about as productive now as Mississippi. We were at parity 10 years ago with the US. Our housing is twice as expensive. We have far more immigrants entering the country than you do with your open southern border. We're slated to have the worst performing economy in the developing world for the next 30 years. He's scuttling the energy industry. He refused to deliver natural gas to the Germans and to the Japanese when they came cap in hand asking, and turned all that money over to the Middle Eastern tyrants and the Russians. He's produced the most totalitarian legislation that Canada has ever seen. He scuttled the Constitution, he stole Canadians' bank accounts during the trucker convoy, and acted unconstitutionally, which the courts have already decided. His energy minister, Stephen Guilbeault, he's at war with Alberta, which has like the third largest oil reserves in the world. Saskatchewan has the largest uranium reserves. Canada could be insanely wealthy if we weren't childish beyond belief.
And all of the Trump appointees, or sorry, nominees for the cabinet down there, pretty much saying the same thing about Canada right now. And there's this podcast comes out once a week with Peter Mansbridge, the former CBC national voice. And he's got two pundits on with him. I listened to it today for about 20 minutes and I just couldn't take it anymore because it's so liberal biased. It's awful. Did I tell you what it's called? It's called Good Talk. That one woman, that French Canadian woman from the Toronto Star is on there. I forget her name. And then another guy. And it's like, well, what can Justin Trudeau do to win the trust of Canadians back? Like, dude. And it's assumed that everybody listening is a liberal loyalist. It's just the way they phrase and couch everything they say. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the CBC, the current CBC, is exactly the same way. They refuse to see anything else. You know, I had this interview the other night. In case you guys haven't seen this, I'm asking you to go back and watch Wednesday night's show. It was one of those nights we couldn't get out on social media at the regular time, so I made a point of getting the show out there via upload a couple of hours later. I interviewed Clayton McAllister. Clayton was one of the Freedom Convoy protesters, and he had 5 charges withdrawn last week in exchange for a 100-word essay on the difference between mischief and protesting. And he spoke so eloquently and so passionately and knowledgeably about everything that happened at that convoy. And if you haven't seen that episode, not on my behalf, but on Clayton's behalf, I ask you to go back and watch that episode from Wednesday night. It's available on all the social media platforms. And just go and check it out. If you have some time this weekend, just go. It's absolutely fantastic. But one thing we do touch on is the media, because he was interviewed, he told me, by Global, I think it was, for 45 minutes, talking about his feelings about the convoy and the love that was being shared. And I think it was in the second week of the convoy. And what they did with his interviews, they took the last 45 seconds of it and they made him seem like a wackadoo, because he said, yeah, I'd take a charge for this. I would take a charge for freedom. And I guess he was all amped up when he said it. But this is after 45 minutes of talking to the person who was interviewing him. And that interview was edited with a whole bunch of other interviews that particular Global reporter had gotten from freedom protesters that day. And they all come across the same way, as slightly unhinged, because we all have passion, right? But they edit it in such a way that makes everybody look wackadoo. And he said, in that moment, I knew the media was completely and totally compromised. And now look at this story, comes out today. And then thank you to the commenter who said this is on the Fifth Estate. It might be even on right now. I thought the Fifth Estate was on Sunday nights. I don't know. It used to be years and years ago. But again, I don't watch TV, so I don't know what night it's on. Maybe it's on their streaming service. But anyway, this story, just so you know, might make your blood start to boil. It did for me. RCMP videos show how extremist ideology fueled armed Coots protesters. Conspiracy-driven violence, growing concern for Canada, experts say. So not the Palestinian protests, not them expropriating Remembrance Day, not the Sikhs versus Hindus dust-ups that have been happening in Toronto for the past week or so, not that. Right-wing extremists were the problem again because of indoctrination. And that's why they want to pass C-63, and they've already passed C-11 and C-18 because they think that what we're reading online is radicalizing us. I believe that they actually believe all of that stuff. Sitting in an interview room in a Southern Alberta RCMP detachment, Tony Olenek looked calm. He stretched his legs as he casually told a police investigator what he thought should happen to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He needs to be tried for treason, Olenek said between bites of dinner. If he's proven guilty, like we know he is, hang him and get back to how it should be. But Trudeau wasn't the one facing trial. That night, February 14th, 2022, the RCMP were interviewing Olenek and Chris Carbert, who had been arrested at an anti-pandemic restriction protest that locked down the Coutts-Alberta border crossing for 2 weeks. Police would accuse them of conspiring to murder police officers. That charge would not hold up at trial. Instead, they were convicted of possessing firearms dangerous to the public peace, with a judge saying they were prepared for a firefight with police. Police evidence obtained by the Fifth Estate shows their actions were fueled by extremist beliefs, including the belief that they would have to defend their fellow protesters against an invading tyrannical authority. That's raised new concerns about the danger conspiracy theories might pose for Canada in the future. Is your blood boiling yet? I honestly think there are bad things happening with elites right now, Carbert said. They're pretty open about it, right? They get the World Economic Forum, he said, referencing an international body frequently the focus of conspiracy theories. The Fifth Estate reviewed more than 10 hours of video showing police interrogations of Olenek and Carbert, in which the two men detailed how they saw the pandemic as a sign of an inevitable collapse of society. Kurt Phillips, a board member of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, I can't believe that they are using the Canadian Anti-Hate Network as a reference point for a news story. They're funded by the Tides Foundation. They are as extreme left as it gets. Kurt Phillips, a board member of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, reviewed the videos for the Fifth Estate and said they showed the men held an extreme worldview in which they believed their lives and way of life were under threat from not only the Canadian government, but also a global network of powerful agents. Not wrong there. I'm not talking about Kurt Phillips. I'm talking about Olenek and Carbert. Obviously, we know what's going on. It's in their own writing. It's on their websites. It's right there in front of our faces. And this guy's trying to say that it's make-believe. We're making stuff up. The Fifth Estate. Oh, hang on. If you have people who are already kind of geared up for some sort of violent confrontation, it's hard to talk that down, Phillips said. They genuinely probably thought they were going to be written about as heroes in history books, that they would go down as people who helped save the country from tyranny. Phillips has researched extremism in Alberta for about 25 years. He said he recognized some of the conspiracy theories espoused by the men from years past. They might change the boogeyman, such as it is, but ultimately the same groups and same people are kind of feared and demonized, Phillips said. The main focus is on distrust and fear of the government. Ultimately, that there will be some sort of civil conflict. Phillips said those arrested and some of their supporters seem to look at the events at Coutts as a kind of precursor to that civil war. The interview showed the effort RCMP made to get the two men to open up, to explain a trove of firearms pulled from an RV in Coutts where the men stayed during the protest. Quickly, the RCMP uncovered the extremist ideology driving the men's actions. I'm probably too deep down the rabbit hole, but it scares me from seeing all these elites doing what they're doing and stuff, Carbert said. I think they're evil. I just do. At one point, an investigator asks Carbert about his biggest fear. Well, we're going to be slaves. This is how my brain works. Notice how they pick and choose their sound bites. Carbon had parked a trailer in the village of Coots where he and Olenek stayed during the protest. RCMP raided the trailer the night they arrested the men and seized several firearms from the trailer and a nearby home. When police asked him about those firearms, Carbert said they could be useful for anything. Let me say, and my son, head to the mountains, he said. People are trying to come and get us. What if we have some for that, right? In the interview, Olenek would deny he was planning an attack, but described getting ready to go on the defensive. But defensive what, the investigator asked. Defense against tyranny, against the government, Olenek replied. At one point, he said he believed the RCMP would eventually join protesters in the fight. The government then will pull the Insurrection Act, Olenek told the investigator. He appeared to misname the Emergencies Act, legislation the federal government invoked, in part based on the allegations at Coots to forcibly disband cross-Canada protests against the COVID-19 mandates. I don't think they mentioned that it was illegally enacted here, though. So then what happens is the United Nations comes, which is Chinese troops, Olenek said, and there's an imminent invasion of Chinese troops on Canadian and American soil. He also said they would protect protesters if you guys pulled the trigger first or if the government sends goons like Chinese troops. Phillips said when he first started tracking extremism, these types of false conspiracy theories were niche. The problem that we now have is we live in a social media world where all of this is at the fingertips of the person. Oh my God. You know what? I cannot go on with this. I'm sorry, you guys. It's going to make my blood literally boil, which would mean my entire body would. I can't. But this is the claptrap that the CBC is feeding people. And they are either reinforcing this idea or they are bringing this anew to people who just don't know. Now, thank goodness that the CBC doesn't have the reach they used to years ago when there were only 3 TV stations, but they still do have some penetration, not just with their TV stations, but with Radio Canada and Radio Quebec, don't forget, and their online presence, which is quite large. And notice, whenever you're watching a CBC video on YouTube, they never have the comments on. Never. But yeah, that's still our enemy. Using the anti-hate network, we all know what they are, as a reference point for a bogus story without looking at the other side of things is criminal. There is no journalistic integrity there whatsoever. None. That's why the CBC needs to come down. They need to be defunded, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later. So Jagmeet Singh, if you or one of your minions are watching me right now, I implore you, do not back down the next time a non-confidence motion comes up in the House of Commons. Stand with the Bloc, stand with the Conservatives, and get rid of these Liberals. Knowing that you're never, you Jagmeet, Jimmy, you are never, ever going to win an election in Canada. But it's possible, if you play your cards right, that you may win opposition. I doubt that too. But something needs to happen here. Because if that kind of crap is allowed to continue circulating in the mainstream, people will remain hypnotized. That wouldn't be the reason, Jagmeet, that you decide you want to pull the pin on this Liberal government. Obviously, you've got your own reasons. But it would certainly help people wake the hell up, getting rid of these Liberals. Here's some good news from the National Post. Ex-Ontario MPP Randy Hillier has Freedom Convoy-related charges stayed over delays. So once again, a court technicality, but at least the charges are stayed there. That's not the best picture of Randy. Oh, by the way, if you're in contact with Randy, tell him, go on Shadow Davis, please. He's like a fart in the wind. I cannot get a hold of Randy in any meaningful way. So Randy, please, if you're watching, come on the show next week. We'll have a talk. The criminal charges against former Ontario legislator Randy Hillier related to his participation in the Freedom Convoy protest have been stayed after a judge ruled his case had taken too long. Hillier was charged in March of 2022 with 9 offenses connected to his role in demonstrations early that year in which protesters gridlocked downtown Ottawa, blah, 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 blah. My question now for Randy would be simple. Are you going to sue them for putting you through all of this stress for the last couple of years. And I don't know how much money you've spent on defending these ridiculous charges, considering they just threw them out. Oh, yeah, we're just, never mind that, Randy. No big deal. After 2.5 years. Ridiculous. Okay, this one might make your blood boil as well. Because as we see this fundamental shift in mentality in the United States, it still hasn't quite come to Canada yet. Like I continue to say, what happens in the United States generally happens in Canada in some weird Canadianized way about 6 to 9 months later. Hopefully, this starts to happen here sometime around March or April, and then continues rolling and rolling and rolling. Mississauga Mayor, look at her. She looks like an old stock Canadian, right? Mississauga Mayor doubles down, refusing to condemn Remembrance Day style vigil for terrorist leader. Carolyn Parrish, the mayor of Mississauga, has doubled down against calls for her to condemn and prevent a Remembrance Day style vigil for Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, the orchestrator of the October 7th Hamas-led terrorist attack on Israel. Parrish continued her battle with concerned Canadians and Jewish rights groups over a planned November 26th vigil as a Lest We Forget Our Heroes event for the recently eliminated terror leader Sinwar. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs shared a recording from a recent city council meeting in which Parrish repeated talking points from the event organizer Faraz al-Najim and compared Sinwar to Nelson Mandela, an anti-apartheid activist who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. I just want to point out, and I'm not being facetious, Nelson Mandela was declared a terrorist by the United States of America till the year 2008, Parrish said. You're a terrorist and somebody else is terrorist may be two different things. I can't even believe it. By comparing mass murderer Yahya Sinwar and human rights hero Nelson Mandela, the mayor of Mississauga, Carolyn Parrish, has again crossed a line. Sija said in a statement on X, Yahya Sinwar was a terrorist, the main architect of the October 7th attacks and the leader of Hamas in Gaza, responsible for the deaths of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians. Sinwar was the leader of Hamas, a listed terrorist entity by Public Safety Canada. Hamas's charter has the vanquishing of its enemy, the Jewish people, written into its constitution. Sija noted it was the Liberal Party who labeled Hamas a terror entity in 2002 when Parrish was a Liberal MP. All right, guys, our friend Dave Freedom out in Toronto took some video today, and I want to play it for you now. For those of you who don't believe in chemtrails, who might be watching the show right now, I'm looking at you, Chris Scott. And by the way, Chris, I want you to come on the show next week and talk about your amendments to the Alberta Bill of Rights or Charter of Rights that Danielle Smith wants to get enacted because of that. She's got a Section 1, Danielle Smith does, in this new Alberta Charter of Rights or Bill of Rights, whatever it's called. And that Section 1, like the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, pretty much says, hey, government can pull the pin on these rights anytime we feel like it. And if there's an emergency, any declared emergency, like a pandemic or whatever, we can just say your rights are no longer valid. And this is the problem. So Chris says he's got a new version of that. I'd like to hear what it is. So yeah, Chris, I want to definitely get you on the show next week. We can talk more about that. Anyway, this is Dave Freedom's video taken today of an Air Canada, what looks to be an Air Canada passenger craft spewing crap into the sky. Let's watch this. Anybody know what atrazine is? Everybody's always concerned with the silver nitrates and whatnot that these aircraft are spewing into the sky, and these chemtrails that crisscross across the skies, and they stay like that for a million years. Kids look up in the sky and go, "Oh my goodness, what's that, Mommy?" And Mommy goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she's looking down at her phone. So what are the acts that are administered by Environment and Climate Change Canada, meaning the acts administered by loop-de-loo current Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault? Monitoring air and water quality and emissions and greenhouse gases. By the way, do you guys know what atrazine is? We're going to get to that in just a second. Controlling the level of toxic substances in commercial products. We pull this down here. Forecasting meteorological patterns, blah, blah, blah. Consulting with Canadians, regulated stakeholders, permitting and, when necessary, researching and protecting the habitat of migratory birds. Environmental protection. Oh, look, the Weather Modification Information Act. There it is. It's right there. You can see it. This is Canada.ca. So for anybody who's yelling, "Conspiracy theory," this is on the Canada.ca website. Weather Modification Act. What is this? First of all, it was put into play in 1985. This is when Brian Mulroney was the prime minister. Let's go ahead and see what this says here. Weather modification activity includes any action designed or intended to produce by physical or chemical means changes in the composition or dynamics of the atmosphere for the purpose of increasing, decreasing, or redistributing precipitation, decreasing or suppressing hail or lightning, or dissipating fog or cloud. What? They can't control the weather. Well, why would they need something called the Weather Modification Information Act if they couldn't affect the weather? No, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, you see, there's a law. There's an act. It's called the Weather You're just nuts. What are you even talking about? That kind of frustration. That level of frustration, I would imagine that all of us are getting used to that kind of thing by now. I know it's still upsetting all these years later, but I think maybe most of us have learned how to deal with that kind of aggravation at this point. But what is atrazine? What are these chemicals they're pumping out in the first place? What is that? Well, maybe atrazine is one of these things. It's a pesticide, we know that. Atrazine induces complete feminization and chemical castration of male African clawed frogs. Where can we find atrazine? Well, according to ecojustice.ca, it's in our water. How does it get there? Maybe farmers are spraying it. I don't know. Or maybe it just comes from the sky. Pesticides are toxic by design. Their main purpose is to eliminate pests and weeds. It's no surprise that when used, pesticides can profoundly impact human health and the environment. That's why, for years, EcoJustice has worked to hold Health Canada accountable for its role in protecting people and the planet from pesticides. Most recently, we've submitted comments about the endocrine-disrupting chemical atrazine. Endocrine disruptors are chemicals that can mimic or interfere with the body's hormones, also known as the endocrine system. Atrazine is a herbicide registered for use in Canada on crops. It's heavily used in corn-growing regions of the country like Quebec and southern Ontario. Because of intensive use in these regions, it can be found in drinking water and in the Great Lakes. In our submission on atrazine, we're calling on Health Canada to be more open about how it monitors our exposure to atrazine in drinking water. Look at whether labeling is preventing the misuse of atrazine. Address the uncertainties around cancer risks and genotoxicity. Consider the well-documented damage atrazine can cause to aquatic plants and amphibians. Yeah, what about humans? Oh, Alex Jones. Apparently, The Onion doesn't own InfoWars yet. We'll get back to that in just a second. So if atrazine induces complete feminization and chemical castration in male African clawed frogs, what does it do to humans? This is from PubMed, man. Let's go down here. Atrazine exposed males suffered from depressed testosterone, decreased breeding gland size, demasculinized/feminized laryngeal development, suppressed mating behavior, reduced spermatogenesis, and decreased fertility. These data are consistent with effects of atrazine observed in other vertebrate classes. I'm wondering, does it have the same effect on humans? Remember, I was talking earlier this week and last week and for weeks and months, whenever we talk about all this trans stuff, we talk about the feminization of men, not just societally, but physically as well. And I've noticed that boys, teenage boys, seem far more feminine today than they did years ago. And I'm sure that part of that has to do with society and what's been foisted on them in schools and whatnot for the past 10 years or so. But could it be that when they drink water, they're ingesting this atrazine and it's causing them to physically become less male? And where is this chemical coming from? If farmers are using it, and it's getting into the ground, and it's getting into our groundwater, and it's getting into the Great Lakes and our drinking water, obviously. But what if the planes are doing it too? And what if they're doing it on purpose? And what would the reason for that be? Anybody? Savage One says, bingo. Anybody know what the purpose of that would be? Man buns. Write it down in the comments. Just first thing that comes into your brain. What would the purpose of all of this be? They're never going to admit it, right? And anybody who comes up with a theory is obviously a conspiracy theorist. But what do you think? Shadow is much better. Well, this is a personal criticism. Let's see. It doesn't do those mocking sounds like other moderators. I don't know what you're talking about. Eddie. Yes, you got it. You got it, my friend. You got it. I think that was the first of those that I saw. I just found that to be rather interesting. Now, InfoWars. Let's get back to InfoWars. Alex Jones, we're worried that he's going to be losing InfoWars, which has been a thing now for 30 years. However, the InfoWars ruling just got tossed, a lifeline from a federal judge. Yesterday, the internet, hang on, let me make this bigger here. Yesterday, the internet exploded with news that the unfunny satirical... Well, I will give them credit. They used to be funny. The unfunny satirical site, The Onion, had purchased InfoWars out of bankruptcy with the help of from a few Sandy Hook family members. For InfoWars supporters who were hoping to secure the company and keep Alex Jones on the air, this was a devastating blow. Well, apparently it didn't happen. This came out. This video from Alex came out yesterday evening. So let's have a look.
So here we are in the InfoWars studios on November 14th, 2024. It is 6:19. And I've just been down the road at the Alex Jones Network studios that were built as backups. And this is the facility we've been in for 16 years. Now, I have major breaking news for everyone. The headlines you see everywhere that the Onion bought InfoWars today is not true. The judge had an emergency hearing today that we filed for at 8 a.m. this morning. It went on for several hours. He was extremely upset, the federal judge, Chris Lopez, and said, this is not a real auction. You don't claim there's a public auction where people can bid up and have them register for it, and then 2 days before change it and say the bids are secret and we don't have to take the highest one. Then he asked the U.S. trustee that ran this, what was the winning bid? He said, well, I can't tell you. Did you hear what I just said? Not only did they not take the highest bid, they won't even say what was paid, but they said, well, it's Alex Jones's judgment. That's like toilet paper. $1.5 billion fake dollars that doesn't exist? You're going to get $1 billion out of this piece of paper? So you can't pledge, that's federal law in bankruptcy, a debt towards something. And especially because doubly, they didn't tell the other bidders that they were going to allow credit to be used to buy it. That's what they're calling it. It's credit in the future, pie in the sky on my future earnings. So they bought my company in a rigged fake auction that didn't even happen with my money that doesn't exist. So the judge says he hasn't set the date yet, next Monday or Tuesday. He said early next week, I take that as Monday or Tuesday, to have an evidentiary hearing on this. My lawyers and the real bidders' lawyers, who are very prestigious, said they've never heard of something like this. Walter Sisak, the lawyer for the folks that tried to buy InfoWars that were good guys, is recognized as the toughest bankruptcy lawyer in Texas. He's known as the Bulldog. He's a no bullshitter. He said he's never seen anything like this. Well, I told them get ready for that. And they didn't really believe me. And they saw it. So Monday afternoon, 2 days before the auction, they said, forget all your bids that had to be in by November 8th. Forget all that. Forget the contracts you signed, the deposit you put down, the rules you signed. That's out the window. There's a secret bid. You just give us an envelope with your bid, and we'll tell you who the winner is. And by the way, we'll take one that's lower if we want. And the U.S. trustee said he had the authority to do that, just like the last federal trustee that the Fed send into these cases if they want, said he could shut this place down in, remember, late May? And then 2 weeks later, the judge had a hearing and fired them, saying you have the authority to do that. The judge said to Chris Murray today, where did you think you had authority to do this? You weren't given the authority to do this. So they've closed the building, cut off the satellite uplinks to radio and TV stations to something they didn't buy. Through bravado, they ordered the IT people to shut down Infowars.com. We've been hijacked. So I told you they tried this in late May. People didn't believe it was so crazy. When they came and said, leave the building with security, I told the security, where's the order? Where's the court order? I guess we're not going to do it. And then 2 weeks later in court, the judge, it all came out. People were like, well, that was true, Alex said. Well, you're damn right it was. Now you see them bragging. They shut us down everywhere. But here I am in this building with the equipment and the rest of it. So.
All right. So we're going to find out more next week as the drama continues on InfoWars and Alex Jones. And, you know, the prestigious bidders, I wouldn't be surprised if the prestigious bidders turns out to be Elon Musk. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. They're playing games down there. They are desperate, and playing games down there. And they've got 2 months to do it before this guy takes office and he becomes the president again. Here's what he said today. Trump wants to end wokeness in education. He has vowed to use federal money as leverage. Donald Trump's vision for education revolves around a single goal: to rid America's schools of perceived wokeness and left-wing indoctrination. The president-elect wants to forbid classroom lessons on gender identity and structural racism. He wants to abolish diversity and inclusion offices. He wants to keep transgender athletes out of girls' sports. Throughout his campaign, the Republican depicted schools as a political battleground to be won back from the left. And now that he's won the White House, he plans to use federal money as leverage to advance his vision on education across the nation. Trump's educational plan pledges to cut funding for schools that defy him on a multitude of issues. On his first day in office, Trump has repeatedly said he will cut money to any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. On the campaign trail, Trump said he would not give 1 penny to schools with vaccine or mask requirements. He said it would be done through executive action. Though even some of his supporters say he lacks the authority to make such swift and sweeping changes, Trump's opponents say his vision of America's schools is warped by politics. No, it's not. That the type of liberal indoctrination he rails against is a fiction. No, it's not. They say his proposals will undermine public education and hurt the students who need school services the most. Will Del Pilar, Senior Vice President for Education Trust, a research and advocacy organization, says it's fear-based, non-factual information, and I would call it propaganda. No, it's not. There's no evidence that students are being taught to question their sexuality in schools. Yes, there is. There is no evidence that our American education system is full of maniacs. Yes, there is. You know, it's interesting to me. Why on earth would you have to say there isn't? All you have to say is, hey, look, this is what you want to do. That's fine, President Trump. Come on in. We don't have any of that here. You see, there's none of that stuff. Instead, they're saying there's none of that stuff in hopes that they'll get the public on their side, but they can't. Because more and more and more people are starting to turn up at these town council, city council, school trustee meetings, and they are not happy. Look at this. This is an interesting story. It doesn't have to do with gender identity, but it has to do with a principal in St. Helens, Oregon. This whole story is dicked up. Let's just throw this video up here.
In more than 20 years of reporting, I've never seen a community rise up against a school board with more anger, outrage, and contempt. They're calling for everyone on the St. Helens School Board to resign. One of the teachers in question is accused of sexually abusing students for several years, and they want to know why he was allowed to teach at school for the first 2 months of the school year while he was under investigation. And for this community, it's just the latest case involving teachers or coaches accused of preying on their children.
No outbursts. We're giving you time to speak. Let us speak.
In St. Helens, the school board meeting was contentious from the start.
Respect our kids in school.
One more burst, you'll be asked to be removed.
I'm sorry, but you can remove a parent, but you can't remove a teacher?
Anger and frustration from every parent here after police arrested 2 teachers on Tuesday accused of sexually abusing students.
I am so angry about this. Furious.
Community members demanded action from the school board after they say they stood by for years as teachers in question abused kids, and accusations were ignored. They noted one of the accused, a 46-year-old choir teacher named Eric Stearns. Police arrested him Tuesday after a 2-month investigation. In court Wednesday, Stearns pleaded not guilty to charges that he sexually abused 6 different students between 20.
Oh, that's it. Well, we do have the story here from Catu 2. Sounds like an alien name. Catu 2. Days after bombshell allegations of sex abuse against students by 2 teachers in the St. Helens School District dropped, a principal has been placed on admin leave and a board chair has resigned. On Friday, the district announced that St. Helens High School principal Dr. Katie Wagner has been placed on admin leave and Ryan Scholl has resigned from his role as board chair. Why? Were they doing it too? This is very interesting. According to a publicly available school board meeting agenda for November the 15th, the district is also considering placing Superintendent Scott Stockwell on paid leave. There's one action item on the agenda. Place Superintendent Stockwell on paid admin leave. The St. Helens School District announced it would be closed Thursday through Monday. Sorry, no classes for you. We've got to handle these sexual miscreants. Oh, and ourselves too for not actually doing it before you guys all found out. This is that teacher, or at least one of them anyway. This closure allows us to address recent events impacting our school community. On Tuesday, St. Helens police officers announced they arrested 1 current and 1 former St. Helens high school teacher on charges of sex abuse against students. The charges came after a 2-month investigation following allegations of sexual abuse at school. Gee, I wonder where all this sexual content is being derived from. Oh, I know. When you make it cool to talk about sex in school and gender identity and you know, being gender neutral and being allowed to identify as a cat or a dog or an ostrich or a frog. And it's all infused into the subjects that you're learning about in school, yeah, I would suppose that some of these deviants would feel a little bit more at liberty to start taking advantage of students. You know, and I said this before, I'll say it again. Predators go where the prey is. And they'll do whatever it takes to get to that prey. They'll dress up as a woman if they're a man. Or they'll say, yeah, it's okay. Just, be yourself. Be who you are. If you think you were born in the wrong body, that's all right. And what are you doing after? Let's go grab a coffee. Now, I'm not saying that it happens with all of them. But I'm saying I believe that it's far more likely to happen given the current environment than it's ever been in the past. It's easier for these predators to get away with it these days because all of this stuff is so much more prevalent than it ever was before. I'm going to leave it there tonight, you guys. We're going to go to the all access on shadowdavis.com for the extension. And we're going to talk about the case of the Covington kids and how liberals/Marxists, neo-Marxists reacted when they saw the very first Make America Great Again red baseball hats. And we're going to turn that around a little bit with world-renowned professor Sam Richards. That is coming up in the extension on shadowdavis.com. I want to go and become a member. Again, right there. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, that's how my name is spelled, shadowdavis.com. Go and become a member, and I'll see you there in just a couple of minutes. For the rest of you, have a fantastic weekend, and I will catch you Monday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. Where's my closing? Oh, here it is. Bye for now.